Alright, so this is going to be part 3 to what if Deku had perfect Cell's powers. So with that being said, let's just roll the intro. Alright, so before we get started, I'd like to say or mention one thing. In my last video, I said that Bakugo was like 5'11", and that he wasn't tall for his age. Alright, so what I meant by that is that he is an appropriate size for his age. I wasn't calling him short by any means, right? That's why I didn't say he was short. I said that he wasn't tall for his age, meaning that it was an appropriate size. So I wouldn't say that 5'11" is short, being that I am, a short person in real life. So I know that 5'11" is not short, but a lot of people in my comment section thought that I was saying that it was. So I just wanted to clarify that, and I was surprised that so many people really cared about that. Anyways, let's get into the actual what if. So in the last part, we just got done with the quirk assessment and the heroes versus villains kind of assignment. So now we're gonna go into the USJ, and yeah, we'll just see where it goes off from there. So our story would begin a little bit after the kind of assessment, or not the assessment, the heroes versus villains kind of test. So All Might would bring Izuku to the kind of teacher's lounge, or teacher's lounge, and basically he's offering one for all, his quirk, to Deku in this case, because he sees a lot of potential within him, and he sees that he is very powerful. So he tells him the story about how he was injured like 5 years ago, and how he can't really use his power to his full potential because of the time limit. So after basically explaining this to Deku, he thinks about it, and he tells All Might that, well, one quirk isn't really going to change, isn't really going to make a difference, because I have so many quirks already. So why don't you give it to someone else who has, not as many powers? And this is when Deku or All Might would ask, like, oh, do you have any recommendations? And this is when Deku would say that Bakugo would be a pretty good candidate, because Bakugo in this timeline is a little bit different than he was in canon, because he isn't as egotistical and as arrogant as he was in the main series, because of how Deku has his quirk and how they are rivals / friends. So Deku was there to always basically balance him out. So after this is kind of done, let's do a little time skip for a few, like maybe a week later, depending on when the USJ kind of starts. So Aizawa would be telling the class about it, and basically telling them to get ready for this kind of trip they're going to take for the USJ, so that they can learn about rescue heroes and what they do. So in this timeline, or in this what if, Bakugo will have one for all, since it is the most, I guess, the best choice in this scenario, since Deku doesn't need it. And basically, I don't think a lot of people don't, or some people don't like it when I give it to Mirio. So in this one, we're gonna give it to Bakugo, since I haven't done that before in my what ifs. So this is when they would get to lunch, and as this is kind of happening, they're kind of talking about their day, and this is when an alarm goes off, and this happens to be the media getting into the school. So because of this, everyone starts freaking out, and they go to the hallway, which they usually do, which they get stuck in. So Deku would look around to see why everyone's kind of panicking, and he would look outside, and this is when he would see all the news reporters and things like that. So what he would do is that he would use instant transmission to kind of teleport above everyone else, and using his wings to kind of help him stay up there. And this is when he would explain to everyone that, well, the media is the one who got in, and that's why the alarm triggered. So everyone would calm down, and basically everything would be resolved at that point. So we could skip a little bit ahead, and this is when we get to the kind of bus, when they get on the bus to go to the USJ. So you guys, I asked you guys whether or what the costume should be for Deku in this What If, and a lot of you guys said basically that it should be something reminiscent to like Saiyan armor. So we're gonna go with something like that. Most of you guys said something like either like Vegeta's kind of current armor, where it's like that kind of only chest plate really, or something similar to what Goku used during the kind of Cell Saga. So they're kind of the same design, but we're gonna go with that. So after this, I think Deku in this What If would also be the class representative because he is very confident and has shown a lot of power during the kind of past chances that he got to use his quirk. So people know that he's very powerful. So he would tell people to get onto the bus, which they would do, and this is when after they got everyone on the bus and they actually started moving, this is when Suyu or Froppy would start basically doing that kind of conversation that she does in the anime about how the top like 3 students in the class, right? So they would say that Deku would be first, like the strongest in the class, and then it would go by Todoroki, then Bakugo. So they would kind of ask Deku about his quirks, since at this point in the series they don't really know each other's quirks too well, their limits and things like that. So Deku would basically explain to the class that his quirk is called I guess I never really I asked you guys what the quirk should be called, whether it be alternate or perfect, and I wasn't seeing too many comments about that, but you guys can tell me. But we're still gonna go with ultimate life form, or ultimate life form. That's what the kind of quirk is called. And he would basically say he would have basic superhuman like abilities, like superhuman strength, speed, and things of that nature, as well as a few other kind of abilities. But he wouldn't go down the entire list since it would be taking way too long. But he would say a few things like flight, energy beams, things like telekinesis, and others, right? So after this, people are kind of shocked at how many quirks this one person has, which they would also ask about the kind of appearance that he has, and he would say that it's meant, or he looks that way because of his mutation quirk and how it helps him kind of use all the quirks, and also helps him kind of survive in different environments. Because if you don't know, the Frieza race, which Cell has a part of him, like that's part of the kind of DNA that Cell took, lets him breathe in outer space, right, and lets him live on really harsh environments, because that's kind of like the whole shtick of like the Frieza race. So yeah, after this is done, they start, Bakugo would be kind of jealous, but not really in a kind of mean way, or he wouldn't take it like a personal attack, I guess. But he would kind of joke around with Deku, saying like, you might be like on top right now, but in the future I'm gonna get to number one hero. I'm gonna become the number one hero, right? And at this point I would say that Bakugo actually does have one for all, since All Might would have chosen him, right? So at this point I think Bakugo would be able to use around 10% of One For All, since he is physically stronger than Canon Deku, and he is a little bit more built. So yeah, because I believe like Canon Deku could only use like 5% at the beginning, and then later on it gets stronger and stronger, right? So at this point he would only be able to use 10% of One For All. So they would finally get to their destination, that being the USJ. They would get out of the bus and greet 13 that would be there waiting for them. So she would let him in, and this is when she would explain that kind of speech, or she do that speech in the anime where she talks about how quirks are very useful, but if you don't train them, if you don't, have control of your quirks, they could really hurt people. So Deku's kind of taking this. He takes more out of this than normally because of how many quirks he has. So even though he is very powerful and has a lot of control over his quirks, he does know that he has a lot of quirks and that he has to kind of master them each, or all of them. So before they could continue with the kind of tour, this is when a basic gateway opens up, and this is where a bunch of villains come out, including Shigaraki and the Nomu. And this is when Aizawa basically tells 13 to protect his students, and that he's going down there to fight. So Deku, seeing this chance to kind of prove himself, he would actually go down there with Aizawa. Aizawa would tell Deku to basically, stay with the others, that he could, fight by himself. And then this is when Deku says Aizawa sensei, or yeah, he would say sensei since he is still his teacher. So he would basically say, I literally got my arm blown off and recovered in like a second or two. I think I can handle myself. Aizawa agrees since he would have heard about this through All Might and the other teachers. So he agrees to let him fight, since he does know he was a recommended student. So this is where it would be Deku, and this is where he would actually use a technique called the multi-form technique. This is actually a Tien move. You can see this in like Super, when he's in the Tournament of Power, he uses it. So I think the way that Tien uses it, it reduces each clone is only 1/4 of the power of the original user. But what I read on the wiki, it says that Cell's version doesn't reduce the power at all, so it makes 4 equally powerful cells. So I might get that wrong or not. You guys can tell me down below, but that's what I saw on the wiki. So if the wiki has it wrong, then that isn't my fault. So this is when Deku would use the multi-form technique and basically use 4 different Dekus to take out multiple villains, since Deku's already strong by himself, but add 4 of them, it's basically a massacre really. But Deku isn't really trying to kill him really. So with the combination of like basically 5 fighters down there, they take out most, if not all, villains that are there. And the only ones really remaining is that are the Nomu and Shigaraki. Shigaraki's just seeing this and saying like, wow, like he's very like angry at this and viciously kind of scratching his neck, and he's wondering like why is this happening. And then he looks at Deku, right, and he's like, what type of quirk does he have, right? Because he would have seen different things like energy blast plus the kind of duplication and the teleportation. So he's wondering like, why does this person have so many quirks? It doesn't make sense, right? And this is when Aizawa actually tries to go and hit Shigaraki, but this is when the Nomu actually grabs the hits or blocks it, right? Then Shigaraki goes up to Aizawa and basically tries to decay him. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the quirk. So he tries to basically, or disintegrate. He tries to disintegrate Aizawa, but Aizawa does stop the quirk in time, and it only gets his arm, just how it was in the anime. And after this, the Nomu starts basically, he takes Aizawa and starts slamming his face into the ground, and Deku sees this and he goes and runs towards Aizawa, right? And he goes and tries to punch the Nomu, but the Nomu doesn't, flinch at all, right? Since he does have that shock absorption. And at this point, Deku's punches are only as strong as 30% of One for All. And then this is when the other 3 cells or Dekus come and try to join the fight. And again, it's not really doing much. So the Nomu starts hitting back at Deku, and it does injure him a bit, but he can't hit all the kind of Dekus, right? So he hits the main Deku, and he basically kind of jumps back a bit because he wasn't expecting the kind of Nomu to be that strong. And this is when the Nomu kind of takes out the other three uh, duplicates, right? So the duplicates don't really have that high durability from what I remember. So they go back into kind of Deku. So Deku's thinking of different ways he can kind of defeat the Nomu, right? And he remembers one of his kind of quirks is using his tail, and his tail is to absorb, right? So he tries to pierce the Nomu, right? And it doesn't work. Again, the kind of shock absorption stops it from going through. So he's thinking of what he can do to actually get the Nomu. So he tries to basically use his telekinesis to kind of stop him in his place, but the Nomu's slowly moving. And what happens is that he tries to kind of absorb him through his tail, right? And it doesn't quite work because the Nomu's still kind of moving and actually is able to get out of the way. So what happens is that this is the part where the rest of a few of the students that are done fighting their villains actually come through. This being Todoroki mostly. So this is when he tells Deku that he has this is when Deku tells Todoroki he has a plan, and he wants him to kind of help, right? So Todoroki agrees since there's a villain attack, right? So what Deku does is he does the kind of telekinesis again to kind of slow down the Nomu, and this is where Todoroki just freezes the Nomu from the bottom half of his body, or the lower part of his body, to kind of freeze his legs so he can't move. After this is done, this is where Deku basically uses his tail to absorb the Nomu. And after this is where Deku starts kind of changing, right? He starts, his body starts mutating, I guess, or evolving. And this is the point where Deku actually becomes semi-perfect Cell after absorbing the Nomu. So after this, Shigaraki's just shocked at what just happened, right? He just saw his Nomu just get absorbed, and he's very angry and doesn't know what to do, and he calls this really cheap. So after a bit, this is when the heroes actually come back, this including All Might and the rest of the heroes. And what happens is that Snipe, the hero with the kind of gun, that kind of revolver, actually shoots 4 bullets. These 4 bullets actually end up injuring Shigaraki in each limb, causing Kurogiri to actually take him and run, and them making their getaway, right? So after this is done, this is when All Might would see what happened, and the kind of rest of the kind of heroes would come and help the other villains that are still, or they would take out the other villains that are there and help Aizawa get, medical care. So All Might would have seen that they took out the main heroes or the main villains that were there, and he would congratulate Deku for his hard work, and he would also see that Bakugo took out all the villains as well, since he was trying to, that's what Bakugo would be trying to do, just how he does in canon, and he would also congratulate him. So the media has a more positive kind of outlook on this, since none of the kind of students got hurt, but a teacher was somewhat injured trying to help or save the kind of kids there. So yeah, this is where I'm going to end it, and in the next part we'll go over the kind of sports festival. And yeah, so if you want more videos like this, give it a like, and this is going to be the video. So yeah.